In this tutorial, I am going to show you how to use a grid to get a drawing in proper proportion. Proportion just means the relative size of one object to the next. And in drawing, you want to make sure that your drawing is in correct proportion. A grid is a mathematical way to assure that what you are drawing is in proportion to the resource image that you're looking at. So I'm going to give you an example of a project that I'm working on. And in this picture, you can see that I've printed out a picture, the full size of a piece of computer paper. And then I used a ruler and measured every 1 inch on all 4 sides of my paper. I connected the lines across from each other and made a grid. This is a 1 inch grid. Then what you'll do is you will take your drawing paper and you'll decide if you're making your drawing the exact same size as your resource image, or if you're going to enlarge it or make it smaller, and you're going to draw a grid on your paper, either the same size or larger or smaller. The important thing is that both the grid on your resource image and the grid on your drawing is exactly square. You want to make sure that you draw your grid very lightly. I'm going to use a drawing pencil, a 4H drawing pencil. It's a very hard pencil, so it draws very lightly. Eventually, you will either erase your grid or you may cover it over in such a way that you do not need to erase it. Here's how I get started. I am going to take my sheet of paper and I'm going to take a ruler. Some rulers have this little extra space here, and some rulers start right at the edge of the ruler. You just want to be cautious of that, because when I go to put the ruler and measure across my paper is 9 inches, so I'm going to get 9 different columns going across. When I do that, I want to make sure that if there's an extra space, I don't line the edge of the ruler with the edge of the paper, because then this first grid is actually going to be over 1 inch. I want to make sure that wherever the inch line begins, that lines up with the edge of my paper. Now I'm going to make a mark at every 1 inch. My resource image is also at every 1 inch, so I would be reproducing this the same size as my resource image. If I wanted my drawing bigger, I could do it every 1.5 inches. I could do it every 2 inches. This paper is slightly larger than an 11-inch paper. So I have 1 square at the bottom that is off a little bit, but that's okay as long as I make sure that when I start the side across from it, I have that small piece on the same side of the paper. After I make 1 inch markings on all 4 sides, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect. So I'm going to take my ruler and put it against the lines on opposite sides, and then I'm going to connect the line with a line. Put my ruler up against opposite markings and connect with a line. It's just like connecting the dots. Now that I've gridded my entire paper, what I want to do is I want to add labels so that I can easily see which square I'm working in. And I can make sure I'm working in the same square by comparing the numbers. So by having column and row numbers, I could say, okay, I'm in column 6 and I'm in row 5. And that's the square that I'm in right now. Okay, so I want to make sure I label them exactly like my original. So this, I tend to make 1, and then I'll keep going. I've also seen people who will do letters on top and numbers across the side. You can do it however you prefer. So my paper is just a little bit bigger. This will eventually get cut off, this little piece, and that's okay. Maybe I'll use that space to test my colored pencils. This one is already square 1, so I'm gonna start here, and I'm gonna go 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay. Now when I go to draw, I am going to use this square as a reference to break apart my drawing into its parts, into its shapes, into its lines, into its angles. If I was going to start with Baby Yoda's right eye, then what I want to do is I'm in column 7 and I'm in square 2. I probably wouldn't start there, but for the sake of this video. And I want to look at little things like, so Baby Yoda's eye in that square goes all the way to the corner. That's where I'm going to start it. And I'm going to look at the angle. I'm going to look, is this curve coming up halfway into the square? Is it coming up less than halfway? I can also do another trick here. I can take a ruler and I can draw an X through my square if I need help with further guidance on what lines up with that. And I can do the same thing to my square here. Or I could break this up in half. Whatever helps. And so now, as I look at it, it is coming up right where this part of my X is. So that's where I'm going to draw it. It comes underneath the X a little bit, and then it comes over. And it comes back to the X, kind of towards the corner. So I'm doing a lot of comparing from one square to the next. Is it halfway up? Is it below the halfway point? Does it come to the corner? And that really helps me get things in the right place. It seems like a lot of work at first because you're starting on this huge grid in a 1-inch space. But as you go along, you'll see, for example, if I were doing the side of the head, once you get going, you kind of just keep an eye on where you're going each time. So I just kind of look ahead. Where does this curve need to go? Where does it need to end? And it goes a little quicker. It looks like Griffin's just about ready to do his grid drawing. He just watched the video. I hope you're ready to do yours too.